Howdy folks, Sam here. So before I give you some exercises on the chromatic harmonica to help your playing, I wanted to talk a little bit about the basic mechanics of how the instrument works, how you should go about playing it. So I'm going to start off today talking about how you hold the damn thing, then I'm going to talk about the note layout on the instrument, and finally look at your embouchure and your breathing. Okay, so let's kick off with how you hold the damn thing. So there are two schools of thought on how you actually go about holding the chromatic. And most people, myself included, tend to switch between those two. Method number one is you hold it exactly like a diatonic harmonica, in terms of that you hold it in the hand that you're not dominant with. So I'm right-handed, so I hold it in my left hand, thumb on the bottom, one or two fingers on top, and then you use your right hand, in my case, just to support it on the side and to operate the slide mechanism, which allows me to go to sharpen the notes. So. The other school of thought is that you hold it just slightly thumb under wherever you're playing and your two fingers come across like that. This is particularly useful if you're playing live, and it is what I use when I play the chromatic live, because it allows me to cup a bullet microphone and move through it, move the harmonica along it, I mean. When I tend to play like that, this hand, my right hand, then becomes almost dominant because it's bearing the brunt of the support as I drag it across my lips, because I might want to play bass all of a sudden. I have to move the microphone to play bass, or I might want to play really high up, so then I've got to move my hand to compensate for that. Ideally, you won't have to do that. You'll be in a recording studio and you'll have a condenser microphone where you can hold it, where you don't have to actually hold a microphone. So yeah, again, something like that would be... And that's something I play live quite a lot, and again, I have to adopt that technique. Some people prefer one over the other. It's really a personal thing. I prefer almost exactly how you'd hold a diatonic harmonica like that. And I'd never really thought about the mechanics of how you go from low notes to high notes, but I did watch a very good video on YouTube recently. A gentleman talking about how you actually pivot between those points. Essentially, the movement is coming mostly from the elbow down there. So you're, again, if you just watch me play a chromatic scale, perhaps that was quite subtle. I should go maybe C major all the way up. What's actually happening there is, although it's very subtle, it's my elbows swinging the harmonica from left to right. So that's the fundamental basics of how you hold the goddamn thing. So in terms of the note layout on the chromatic, you will find that every 4 holes on the chromatic you go through an entire octave, or an entire chromatic octave in a Western scale. Thus you tend to find that chromatic harmonicas tend to come in the 16-hole, or 4-octave variety, or the 12-hole, so a 3-octave. Occasionally you see 10 holes, which is 2.5 octaves, but people tend to go for a sort of a clean octave either way. And in terms of how that octave operates on a chromatic, this is where things become a bit more interesting and a bit more peculiar. Holes 1, 2, 3, 4, when the slide is out, is C, E, G, C, and when you push the slide in, that sharpens it, so it's C sharp, then you get the enharmonic equivalent of E sharp, which is F, G sharp, and then C sharp again, an octave up. Drawing air through, what we call drawing, breathing in, you get D, F, A, B, and then you sharpen those notes again, so you get E flat, F sharp, B flat, and B sharp, the enharmonic equivalent of which is C again. So with that, you find that you can play F twice, so if I go to hold 2, I can play F by breathing in, or F by breathing out with the slide in. You also find that when the octaves meet, I can play the same note C in 3 different positions. So if I'm now playing hole 4, I can play C by blowing out. If I play hole 5, I can play C by blowing out. If I play 4 draw with the slide in, I can again play C. This comes in handy, sometimes it gets in the way. It's something you learn how to adapt to when you play the instrument. Often it gets quite interesting. example, going through E and F there. If you think about it in basic music theory terms, what happens when you play the slide out? You're playing C major. When you're playing the slide in, you're playing C sharp major. It's as simple as that, and that gives you the full chromatic scale. If you're explaining it to somebody who doesn't know anything about music theory, the easiest way to say is it's kind of like a piano. When the slide is out, it's all the white notes. When the slide is in, it's all the black notes. It's not quite that simple because, like I've said, there are some crossovers. But there you go. That is your note layout. So exactly like the diatonic harmonica, on the chromatic there are two main types of embouchure, or how your lips make contact with the instrument. The first is known as lip pursing or puckering. There's so much innuendo on the harmonica, it's ridiculous. But puckering is where you almost whistle, so you tighten the sides, corners of your lips, and you're breathing through the center of your lips, breathing in and out, obviously. So then you're just adapting that to playing a single hole at a time as you go up and down on the instrument. So. The method which I prefer is known as tongue blocking. This is where you jam a little bit more of the instrument into your mouth and you cover 2 or 3 holes at a time with your tongue, and you breathe out at the corners of your lips. You keep the center of your lips closed. And you can play octaves like that. There's whole sorts of things you can do with that. That sounds like this. Now, on the diatonic harmonica, I personally almost exclusively lip purse, because the reeds are much thicker, they're much tougher, and they're designed to be bent. I find that lip pursing gives me more power in terms of actually attacking the instrument, so you can sound like this. It also frees up my tongue a little bit to bend notes, like I was just saying, or to sort of do trills, or to really tongue the note. On the chromatic, because the reeds are much more delicate, you shouldn't be bending notes. I think the manufacturers often write in their warranty that if you're bending notes on a chromatic, you will void the warranty. Some more advanced players do, and there's nothing wrong with that. We can get to that at a later stage. But for now, you shouldn't be bending notes. To my ear, I almost exclusively use tongue blocking on the chromatic. I don't know if my camera microphone picked it up, but earlier it's a much richer tone on the instrument, which I quite like, though again, occasionally you will switch things because you want a slightly thinner tone for this or that or whatever. For me also, it gives me more of a reference. Having more of my mouth on the instrument allows me to actually reference where I am, because it's quite easy to get lost on the instrument, or I find it is anyway, so it just helps me maintain a little bit more control. 2 other points in terms of embouchure is that most people tend to have a very slight overbite. So to compensate for that and to help you get your lips flat and even so that your top lip isn't bouncing over the top, most people tend to tilt the harmonica just slightly towards the floor so it's getting flat on the lips there like that. And last point in terms of breathing, there's all sorts of thoughts in terms of how you're breathing from your diaphragm or from your chest. I actually went through a brief period of learning the trumpet, unsuccessfully I might add, and it was all diaphragm breathing, whereas I find personally a lot of harmonica players will use their chest because you're breathing in and out all the time, so you don't need to take masses of air in and then breathe out one long note and then just use the keys on a trumpet to change the pitch. Because you're breathing in and out, you're losing a lot more chest. That's not saying I'm not using the diaphragm as well. If I'm holding a long note, I might use the diaphragm to open up my chest and open up my body to take in more air. But particularly in the chromatic, you need, because the reeds are much more delicate, they're much more fine-tuned, you don't need nearly as much breath as you think you do. It's quite easy to just have a very soft, what I almost call sort of chest breathing. I was watching a video of the great Toots Thielemans given an interview. He's probably one of the greatest chromatic harmonic players of all time, along with Larry Adler and Stevie Wonder. And he was actually saying to the interviewer that he's asthmatic, so deep, heavy breathing and rigorous breathing just simply isn't for him, and yet he's still one of the greatest players of all time, mostly because he's breathing in and out with the chest, so it's quite natural. So there you go. In the next lesson, I'm going to teach you the chromatic scale as a basic warm-up. It's a chromatic instrument. You should be able to play the chromatic scale on it. So look forward to seeing you then. I'm going to post some funny outtakes and things I fucked up before just because that's fun. I did try and hook up my microphone, but actually synchronizing that to the video is just a whole load of hassle, man. I don't have a load of time and money. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to make do with my shitty camera microphone. But oh well, c'est la vie. See you soon. So lick pursing on this goes, and that way I also find it very easy to bend notes, so it's just saying, you need to be quiet. Right, silly. My cat Cleo just joined the conversation because she likes blues.